Okay, welcome back. So let's carry on. I think ceilings are needed within this crypt at the moment because it's quite open air. So we're going to have a look for the SM ceiling. And we've got a few different ceiling pieces here of different arch length. I think I just want this simple ceiling here, which I'm going to drag in to the top-down view. And I'm going to try and position. Now, it's pretty invisible from the top, which is slightly annoying. But as long as I know which corner we are aligning, or whether we're aligning a corner, no, it looks like the center of the mesh is actually the center of it. So we're not aligning a corner at all. We're trying to place it in the middle, and we're trying to have it lifted up. We can use that either the right or the back view to do that. Lift it up so that it meets with, let's see, we don't actually want it to go over our walls. We want it to overlap them so that when we're inside, there you go, you can see completely blocked off by the wall and the ceiling like so. So now all that we need to do is repeat this to cover the entirety of the dungeon using a bit of shift clicking magic once we've got a few of them. And there we go. We've got a ceiling that basically covers the entirety of our dungeon. We just need to extend that ceiling a little bit further to cover our staircase. So there we've got the staircase covered as well. Now I'm going to try and look for some doors that I want. So I'm going to look for SM door. And you can see we've got these doorways with doors separate. Actually, I think we want a BP door, so a blueprint door, that has both of them already put together into a blueprint. So we've got the crypt doorway, we've got the dungeon doorway. We want a dungeon doorway in our upper level. So let's go and put that in the level and arrange it so that actually the doorway should be at the other end, not near my secret passage. So there we go. We've got a doorway over here. Now I want to set the doors slightly ajar. So if I select the blueprint, I can then go down and have a look at the individual components that make it up with a left door and a right door. And I can select the rotation and the transform of the Z-axis to rotate these doors a little bit open, both of them, so that they both swing open in the same direction. Like so, we've got a doorway out to the courtyard. Now let's look for SM pillar, and I want the SM pillar, not the crypt pillar. I'm going to drag this into our scene, and I'm going to position it in the middle of these posts. There we go, like so. Now I think to break up the monotony of these walls, we're going to need some arches. So if we search for SM arch, then we've got ceiling arch A's and B's. Just going to go with the A's for now. We can always easily swap out a mesh if we need to. So I've positioned this arch. It should be going over the entry to the secret passage, and then I can lift it up so that it's properly aligned with the ceiling. Let's duplicate out these arches so that they cover this entire wall. Then I'm going to shift select them all and duplicate them along the room. So that does the arches in one orientation. Let's rotate them by 90 degrees with an alt click to make a duplicate at the same time. And let's duplicate them in the other orientation. There we go. That's broken up the monotony of that room quite significantly. We may want to have some of those arches in the staircase as well. So I selected a group of arches that I've already got, and I'll alt drag them to fill the staircase. That's looking a lot better. And I'm just noticing that I think I probably need pillars in every one of these spots as well. In the case of the staircase, I think I need 2 pillars, one on top of the other. And there you go. I've got pillars now on each of these arches, which makes the room really filled out and look good. And we've almost got all the pillars that we want here in the staircase. I'm just going to need to duplicate these sets of 4 pillars to go a little bit further. And to finish this off, I'm just going to need to add in some cell walls. So we've actually got, I noticed it before, we have a BP cell here, which has got a door. So I'm going to bring that in for the cell doors. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees and position it between the pillars. Duplicate that around. And then we're going to need just the cell side, which is SM cell. I'm going to position that correctly and duplicate it around. There we go. We've got cell walls, we've got cells, and we've got a bit of a dungeon setup going on. Now the next bit, the whole crypt downstairs, is basically more of the same but with different meshes. I'm just going to go ahead and speed through that while I create it. So one thing I've noticed here with the ceiling is that because we've got a slightly wider section where it interfaces with the units of the dungeon, we actually need to use this half ceiling to bridge the gap, and we'll have to use a bit of flat ceiling too. So I'm just going to duplicate this, going to rotate it 180 degrees, and you can see we've got a bit of a hole here. So we're going to use this SM crypt ceiling flat to patch that over. And that covers it over rather nicely. And we'll just duplicate that whole assembly into the corridor. And now we can just use the standard crypt ceilings here. And you can see they dovetail nicely into that little patched bit of ceiling that we've created. Now I'm getting to the bit where I'm going to be using the mausoleum meshes. So the mausoleum is a funny looking double mesh here. Well, two sides to it, and there's a ceiling as well, especially for it. So let's take in the mausoleum and plonk it in our scene to see what it looks like. And let's put it at the right height for our crypt. And you can see it's just this one wall that's rounded, so we do still need a capping wall at the end here. And what we can do is we can either rotate or scale it to the other side. So I can just go ahead and kind of invert the scale for the mausoleum to get a mirror image on the other side. And I just need to do the same old thing with the ceiling too. Just position it down at the right level, and you can see that the ceiling fits on perfectly to this mesh underneath it. Just going to duplicate it and scale it by -1. And now minus a floor and something on the end wall over there, we've got ourselves a nice looking little mausoleum here. Now with any of these really boring walls, we can actually swap them out for other static mesh walls. So if you go to the details pane and scroll down to where you've got the static mesh, then what we can do is we can just go in here and search for SM crypt wall. And you can see there's a few decorative options. So you could select the decorative A, for example, instead. In this case, it's rotated. This wall is rotated the wrong way. So I'm just going to have to rotate it by 180 and put it into place. And you can see that you get a more decorative wall that's in keeping with the rest of this mausoleum area. So now I'm just adding some arches and pillars. Having to bodge it with this arch just a little bit by scaling it, which is not ideal, but it'll do. So let's do a quick fly through to see if there's anything obviously missing. So here I am in my courtyard, and we're going to fly into the dungeon, and you can see that that looks pretty good. Everything seems to be matching up. No kind of open gaps between things. Now I can go down my staircase, and let's just check. The staircase looks okay as well. Yep, that looks good. Now we're going to go down. I've put a little arch and a hallway little door here. We may need to put something across this top element here because I can see a bit of a gap. If we look for SM trim, then there seems to be something that may fit at the bill. It doesn't quite align with the axis, so what I'm going to do is just quickly switch off our grid snapping so that I can put it in place like so. And I'm also going to move the arch ever so slightly so that it's not penetrating this wall, because I don't want to see it on this side. I just want to see it on the other side like so. And now I'm actually looking at these bits of wall between the pillars, and they don't look quite right. So I think what we need here is this SM edge stones, which if I drag them into the scene, you can see just look like this. They kind of neaten up that edge there. Now, I've had the grid snapping off when I brought this in, so let's go back to switch on the grid snapping, and then we can right click on the object and go to snapping and then snap origin to grid, which then puts it back onto the grid and allows us to move it around and put it between these edging pillars here. Having duplicated that to both sides, I think that just makes this staircase look a little bit better. Let's continue our fly through. So we can see here's our dead end over here. Everything's looking okay. What if we go in the other direction? Well, I think we need something on this wall here, so I'm just going to swap that out. So I'm just going for a decorative B and rotating it round like so. Looks a little bit less monotonous. Let's continue the fly through. Down we go down this corridor and in to our mausoleum, which is looking quite all right, apart from this arch poking through. So let's push the arch back just a little bit. In fact, we can, without switching grid snapping off, we could just adjust things minutely in the details pane just by shifting the x-axis, coming through and having a look and seeing that that looks okay here. Noticing that I've actually got a couple of pillars missing here as well. We could just use a bit of edge trim stone here instead. Just changing the grid snapping scale to place these stones as they don't really fit onto our modular system in this particular location. But they do the job of rounding things off quite nicely. So great stuff. One thing before we finish off, we've got 200 and almost 60 actors in our scene, and I forgot to put them into folders. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that now. And one way that's quite easy to do this by sections is to box select, which you can just do by left clicking and dragging on any of the orthographic views. You can see that allows us to select objects quite easily. We might just want to deselect a couple of things manually. So these selected actors, I'm going to right click, move to a new folder called the dungeon. So now we've got the courtyard, the dungeon. We can hide both of these so that we can see what actors we actually selected. I can see that the walls here haven't been selected, so I can Control Alt click in the 3D viewport. I can also box select those actors, and I can right click, move them to the courtyard, so that now when I go to the courtyard folder and make it invisible, that goes as well. The next thing I want to do is the staircase. So I'm box selecting that from the right view, just going into the 3D view and visually inspecting that everything I wanted has been selected. Right clicking that, move to create new folder, and we'll call this one the staircase. Let's hide it, make sure we got all the actors that we wanted. Looks like we did. Now I'm going to box select this whole corridor section. Again, visually inspecting for any actors that may have got missed. Right clicking, move to create new folder, corridor. Then we can hide the corridor. And now the last bit that's left, which is pretty easy to do, is going to be our mausoleum. So let's right click and create a new folder and call it the mausoleum, which I always struggle to spell, but I think I managed by copying how it was spelt in the assets. So now if we close down all of our folders, we should hopefully not have any straggling leftovers that are not in any of these areas. And we can individually just enable the courtyard, for example, and just see that in our 3D view. We might just enable the dungeon or the mausoleum, and we can just see individual elements one at a time if we need to. And that can be helpful when we get to having lots of actors like this. And you might want to split out your level in a different way. You might want to put the ceilings inside folders. You can have folders within folders as well, so that you could disable the ceilings while you're trying to do work on just the floors. It depends on your own personal workflow, and you'll get a feel for that as you go along. But it's good to keep some sort of order there in the outliner. Okay, so that has been a mammoth long lecture. Well done for sticking through it. There's a lot of clicking and dragging to be done with level layout, but hopefully you've now got a feel for how to do this modular level layout and you feel empowered to create your own levels. I'll see you in the next lecture.